Welcome to Paranomaly, where each episode begins with a story, then we take a look at the facts behind the legend. Tonight's story is as follows. It was late, somewhere around 2 in the morning. I'd been walking home after visiting the love of my life at that time. The road was empty, just that stretch of asphalt and the sound of my own footsteps. 2 empty houses on a rural stretch of road are all that was in view. So when I saw the lights in the distance, I felt relief. 5 of them, flashing red, and I figured it was a police car, or maybe a fire truck parked off the road. Something normal, something with people. I kept walking, and the lights didn't move. When I got closer, I realized they weren't on the road. They were above it. Not high, just above the tree line, hovering. I slowed down. The field to my right lit up in red. Not flashing like emergency lights. They were pulsing. It had a rhythm. The trees caught it too, branches glowing red, then falling back into darkness. I stopped walking. I didn't want to get closer, but I couldn't stop looking. And the shape started to form. Just enough to understand that whatever it wasn't supposed to be here. Bigger than anything I'd seen up close like that. And silent. There was no engine and no wind. Nothing. Started moving slowly toward me. This wasn't something I could explain. I dropped into the ditch beside the road without thinking, and I pressed myself into the dirt, and I didn't move. And the light washed over me, bright enough that I could see, like a silent firework had gone off in the sky, a wash of red light turning the dark of night into a red hue. I kept my eyes open. I don't know why. I wish I hadn't. It passed over, not directly above me, but close enough that I felt it. There was no heat or wind, it was just its presence. Something huge moving through the air. Then it stopped. I didn't move, and I didn't breathe. And the light shifted, pulled away. I lifted my head just enough to look. It had moved toward one of the houses across the field, hovering above it, still and silent, and still pulsing. And I ran. I didn't think and I didn't look back. I just ran straight for the other house, and I hit the door harder than I meant to, and I kept knocking and shouting, open the door, please!" And nothing. No movement inside, no lights. It was just me, and that glow behind me. And I turned, and it was there, watching, scanning, searching. It was everywhere. That's when I saw headlights, a car coming down the road, and I ran out to the middle of it, and I didn't care if they hit me. Thankfully, they stopped. I don't remember what I said, just that they looked at me like something was wrong, like I wasn't making sense, but they drove me. They didn't ask questions and they didn't argue, they just drove. And I kept looking back and I kept expecting to see it again, following, but there was nothing, just darkness and the road behind us. I thought that meant it was over, that whatever I saw stayed out there. It didn't. The police station felt smaller than it should have. I don't know why that stood out to me. Maybe because I expected something bigger and brighter and safer. But it was just a desk, a radio, and a man behind it who looked like he'd been awake too long. And that made it worse. This is my rescue? But when I started talking, really talking, he didn't interrupt me. And he didn't laugh. He didn't tell me to slow down. He just watched. And the more I said, the more I realized how it sounded. Lights in the sky, something following me, something moving without sound. And by the time I finished, I expected him to brush it off. Tell me I was tired, or worse. But he didn't. He picked up the radio, said a name, asked where he was. There was a pause, and then a response I couldn't hear clearly. And the man behind the desk looked at me again, different this time. He told me to wait. He didn't leave. He just sat there, one hand resting near the radio like he didn't want to lose it. And a few minutes later, another officer came in. He looked at me, then the man behind the desk. They didn't need to say much, just a few words back and forth. It was quiet and controlled. Same lights. And that's when something shifted, because now it wasn't just me. The second officer turned to me, asked me where I saw it. I told him, and he didn't hesitate. He just nodded. Let's go. The drive back felt longer than the walk. I kept watching the road, waiting, expecting those lights, and they didn't come. There was nothing. When we got close, he slowed down. He didn't turn on his lights, and we didn't make a sound. He just pulled over where I told him. The field was dark and empty, like nothing had ever been there. For a second, I thought, hell, maybe I had made it up. Maybe I was just tired. And the officer stepped out, and I followed. We walked toward the field, slow and careful. We didn't say anything. The animals did it for us. A sound broke the quiet. It was sharp and loud. Horses. Somewhere off to the side. Then another, kicking. Wood cracking against something. Then dogs barking. Not the kind you hear when someone walks by. This was different. It was continuous and panicked. And the officer stopped, and he turned his head slightly. He was listening. Then it happened. It was movement. Not in front of us. Beyond the trees. Something rising, slow and deliberate. And you could feel it before you saw it. That same pressure, not on my body, but in the air. And the officer stepped forward. I followed his line of sight and saw it. Not lights, not at first, just a shape, dark against darker. Then the red came. One light, then another, then all of them, pulsing, running across it, left to right, then back again. The whole thing moved. It wasn't flying or gliding, it just shifted forward, like it was suspended and deciding where to go next. It didn't make a sound, not even when it cleared the tops of the trees. And the officer moved, quick, dropped to one knee, and I heard the metal before I saw his gun was drawn, pointed straight at it. I thought he was going to fire, but he didn't. He just stayed there, frozen, watching. Then he lowered his gun. It was fast, like he realized it wouldn't matter. He got up and grabbed my arm, hard. Move! We ran and didn't look back, and the car felt so far away, and it wasn't. But we made it inside, and the doors slammed, and he reached for the radio, and his hands were shaking just enough for me to notice, and he called it in. And I didn't listen to everything, it was just pieces. It's back in the field, same object. And I turned to the windshield and saw it again, closer now. Near enough that I could see the way it moved. It was just rocking back and forth. And the lights kept cycling, faster now, and brighter. And we didn't move. We didn't start the car, we just watched it. Like we were trying to understand it before it changed again. And another set of headlights pulled into the lot behind us. Another car. Another officer. And he got out, and he walked towards us. And he stopped when he got next to us, and he didn't say anything. He just stood there, watching, all three of us. None of us speaking, none of us moving. Just looking at something we couldn't explain. And it stayed there. Then it rose higher and cleared the trees and was gone. Just like that. No sound, no trail, nothing. The air settled, and the animals quieted, and the field was empty, like it never happened. And the officer beside me finally moved, and he lowered the radio, and he exhaled, long and slow. Then he looked at me. Not like before, not like I was mistaken or confused. Like we'd all just seen the same thing and neither of us could answer for it. He drove me home, and neither of us said much on the way. I didn't know what to say. When we pulled up, he sat there for a second before I got out, like he wanted to say something or ask something, but didn't. I stepped out of the car, and I closed the door and started toward the house. And for a moment, I thought it was over, that whatever it was stayed out there in that field, in the dark. What you just heard isn't just a story, it's a reconstruction of a real event. On September 3rd, 1965, an 18-year-old named Norman Moscayero was walking home along a dark stretch of road in Kensington, New Hampshire, just outside the town of Exeter. He reported seeing multiple red lights hovering above the trees, lighting up a field, and moving silently toward him. Terrified, he ran. He ended up at the Exeter police station, pale and shaken, and desperate enough that the officer on duty took him seriously. And that's where the story stops being one man's experience. Because when police went back with him, they saw it too. Officer Eugene Bertrand returned to the field with Moscayero, At first, nothing, then animals in the area began reacting. Horses kicking and dogs barking, and an object rose from the tree line. Bertrand described it as a massive, dark, with red... Bertrand described it as massive, dark, with red lights moving across it in sequence. It moved silently and it approached them, and it stayed long enough for a second officer, David Hunt, to arrive and witness it as well. 3 separate people, same object, same description, filed in separate reports. That's where most stories would end, but this one didn't. Because what followed is where things get complicated. After the reports were filed, the Exeter police chief contacted nearby Peace Air Force Base, and the military responded. Air Force personnel interviewed all the witnesses, and initially the response was careful and measured. One report stated that they were unable to determine a probable cause. The witnesses were described as stable, reliable, especially the officers, but that didn't last. Before a full investigation could be finalized, a public explanation was released. The Pentagon told reporters the sighting was likely nothing more than stars and planets distorted by atmospheric conditions, a temperature inversion. And that explanation didn't sit well, not with Mosqueiro, and not with the officers, and not with anyone else who had been there. Because what they described wasn't distant light, it was close and low and silent, and according to them, it reacted to them. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO Instagram program. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program at the time, later offered another explanation. Military activity. A training operation known as Operation Big Blast was taking place that night, along with several aircraft in the area. But even that explanation had problems. The officers pushed back hard. They wrote directly to Project Blue Book stating that what they saw was not an aircraft, not military, not civilian, not anything they recognized. And they emphasized details that are difficult to ignore. There was no sound, no wings, no visible propulsion, and light. Light so intense, it illuminated an entire field and nearby houses in red. They also pointed out a critical issue: timing. According to them, the sighting occurred after the reported military activity had already ended, which meant the explanation didn't line up. Months passed, and the case gained attention, and journalists investigated. Other witnesses came forward, people in the same area reporting similar lights in the sky before and after that night. And eventually, the Air Force responded again, this time more directly. They stated they had been unable to identify the object observed on September 3rd, 1965. No confirmation, no clear explanation, just unidentified. Over time, other theories surfaced. One of the more grounded explanations suggested the lights may have come from military refueling aircraft KC-97 tankers with red lights flashing in sequence beneath them. But even that doesn't come close to explaining what was reported. The silence and the movement and the proximity, or the fact that multiple people in different locations described nearly identical behavior. The Exeter Incident remains one of the more well-documented UFO sightings in the United States. Not because of one person's story, but because that story was shared, confirmed, and investigated. And after all of it, the official conclusion never changed. They couldn't explain what it was. Only that it was a UFO, that it was there, and it was seen.